Thank you, Tina, for helping us remember to record. Good. I can remember when I was first exposed to Myers-Briggs, it was a person who was on staff with me, and he was learning all about it, and he and I were very, very different. And I had misjudged him so deeply that because we responded to everything in very different ways. I'm extroverted and get energy from being with people and thoughts and challenges and all that. So we go away like on a church retreat, and we'd come back and he would disappear for 2 or 3 days. And I always thought, like, I think he's off like in sin or something, what is he doing? And he'd say, well, I need tent time. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I would be energized by the experience and he would be worn out by the experience. And so that process, when you said it helps me to allow other people to be who they are, that is really huge. Because particularly when we're tired, we want everybody to be like us. But that would be a pretty nasty place if everybody was an ISFP. Do you know what I'm saying, Sandy?
No.
Just kidding. Let me transition. Let me share my screen for a second, and I have some stuff I'd like to teach about if I can find it. Understanding our personality really is, it does matter. And I'm going to move through this kind of quickly because it is in the download for this section. It's here, but it's different when we will talk about it. And this one part is really valuable to recognize that, the way that I would understand things is that we've been created, uniquely designed by God, and you've been created with strengths and weaknesses, and that's God's intent, not just the strength. Sometimes we have the impression that our weaknesses are all bad things, but actually our weaknesses is part of how we're accessible to others. It's what those differences that others have and our weaknesses supplement each other and build community. But the design that we have with our strengths and weaknesses, that has also been marred or affected or distorted by some things. And one of those is the fall. The sinfulness of humanity means that selfishness comes into play for all of us. And the more that we don't recognize that, the more that we don't address that, the more it actually warps our personality. Another is our family of origin. And in our family, in 2 generations, with my siblings, we had 5. One died at a young age. The 3 of the other ones are pretty similar, but we have a pretty driven, and in the Myers-Briggs have a J component. We like to finish things and finish them on time, where my brother doesn't fit in that at all. And I realized that he's been misunderstood by our whole family his whole life. And I look down to my children, and 3 of them are introverts, and 1 is an extrovert. And we kind of just tamped him down and kept him smaller than he naturally, I think, should have been. So our family of origin kind of warped. It has a tendency to warp some people more than others, because there often becomes a group identity or personality, and it sometimes might not tolerate others as much. So a lot of things in our family of origin affect our personality, our view of ourselves, our understanding, and how we take things in and how we present ourselves. That's really what you could define personality. Circumstances change us. It could be whether we grow up in Texas or in Canada, even those things of weather and season, circumstances of whether there's wealth or poverty in the setting. All these kinds of circumstances affect, again, how we see ourselves, how we receive information about ourselves, how we present ourselves. Another big one is our physical factors. As I've mentioned at a few points, I grew up very small, And so up until my freshman year of high school, I was smallest kid in the class. So I tried to, I coped with it by trying to be fast, funny, fast in wit, fast in sports, because I was too small to be anything else. So it really affected my persona. And that later, as I grew, never huge, but as I grew, I still carried with me this small self picture. And so I would fight to be heard. But later, even as I'm pastoring, at that point, you're in a place of authority to some degree, but I would still see myself as small and maybe would not always steward that well because of I didn't perceive myself accurately. Even earlier today, I was meeting with a group, and I said that often people will find out late in life that they've been living their lives based on lies that grew up in the soil of self-ignorance. And so in the Surface Your Purpose section of this, I bring that idea up. And so if we don't understand ourselves well, it can really affect, we're living based on lies. And so that never works out well in the long haul. And so physical factors are one other thing. And then the last one is personal choices. And that will affect often, again, our view of ourselves, our presentation of ourselves, and how we receive others into our life and world. So the reason I bring those things up is to say that who you are is a mixture of all of those things and your design. And so we want to be able to recognize as much as we can that those impacts of the distorters or the influencers, and also be able to embrace the strengths, weaknesses under it in relation to our personality. So the distortions, if we don't ever kind of, what's the word that I want? I don't want to say disassociate, but kind of extract ourselves from ourselves and look at ourselves. Those things that have become warping factors, like our family of origin, I realize as I get older, my family of origin determines who I am. It's so much more than I ever realized. And when you get married, you are marrying two family of origins. It's crazy. Those factors, and often distorting factors, come into play for our whole lives. So what I wanted to do was spend some time to just go through, just to give you a general understanding of the different personality inventories there, and then I'll break us into small groups, and then we'll come back together for some questions. But the disc one looks like that, and you can remember that those letters, a lot of these you'll notice there's overlap, and that's part of what I want you to see too, is that it's almost like I thought about getting images from a 3D printer. A 3D printer prints on different levels. It prints once and then it prints over and over, and it's stacking them up. And I feel like personality inventories can be used that way too, that you'll see the overlap and they're giving you more of a three-dimensional picture of yourself than just a one-dimensional picture or a no-dimensional picture that you have just from your observation, or one inventory, but multiple ones, you start to see a little more color and a little more depth into your personality. So DISC stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, conscientiousness. One way that you may find helpful in relation to that is that sometimes people will do these and relate each of the four areas to different animals. And so what you have is the lion is kind of the dominant, result-oriented, walks into the room, forceful, kind of takes control. The otter is a person of influence. They're fun, outgoing. They tend to be storytellers, that kind of thing. The steadiness person is like a golden retriever. They're loyal, they're patient, humble. or the conscientious person, the beaver, gets things done. And so we're usually a mixture of those things. And so recognizing that can be very helpful. I was going with a friend. We were going to be a kind of like a counseling leadership training team to go support a couple teams in the country of Jordan. And so somebody was working us through some kind of like relational building. We didn't know each other very well. And so we did something around these questions, and we're filling them out. And I'm noticing, like, the first kinds of questions, most of them related to the dominant lion. And that's kind of that's my gig. And so I'm filling out, I'm embarrassed saying, like, sorry, this test, that you got to check like all the boxes. And I looked over and he had none of them checked. And so he was the exact opposite of what I was. So later on, where my thing's blank, he's all conscientious, steadiness. And so you see that when we went, we realized at first, oh, we're really different. But then when we went as a team, it was really pretty awesome because we recognized those things. The Myers and Briggs.
Tom.
Yep, go for
it. Could I just say something about the disc? If you could just go back to it.
Yeah.
The disc, I don't know if we are familiar with Uniquely You. Dr. Mel Kavanaugh talks about the disc, and that's the one that I'm mainly trained in. And he actually has two graphs actually through his assessment piece, and one is the expected me, and the other one is the real me. Okay. And so it actually shows what's expected of me, say publicly, and then who I am privately. And then when it does the D and the C, it's actually a person that's task orientated. And then the I and the S are persons that are people orientated.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Great. And that question, that idea of the internal me and the external me, someone who filled out this really saw a difference within their disc around them. And that's where, again, even some of the other inventories can help to even understand and explain some of that. Mix those, as also those 5 influencers come into play, but that's good. And so, you do have the people, you got the task, you got small detail, you have big sweeping things. Good. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts about this? Because we'll come back to it at the very end too.
I was just curious about that. If your internal or natural style was different than your adapted or external, I was curious about what is that representing, like an internal, like a conflict, or is that normal? But what is that saying?
Let's hold that one for right now, but that's good, because that's good. Let's pull that into the kind of application at the end, because that's a very valuable one. And so but it is a reason to take these things. And just surface that and you say, does that mean like I'm a chameleon or I'm hiding? Or so there can be different ways that can come out, but that'd be great. Good. Let me move us, because I do want to be able to get time in small group in together. The Myers and Briggs Temperament Indicator, that's what MBTI stands for, really has just, again, 4 different areas, really. And the first is whether somebody is extroverted or introverted, and that really has to do with where you get energized. So it doesn't just mean I'm a people person or not. You could be extroverted and still not be a great people person. I'm extroverted. I'm an extroverted thinker. So I like to be around people to discuss thoughts, but I'm not great to be around people to just hang out at a party. So it's a little more than that. But when I'm around people, I'm energized, where an introvert tends to be drained. So those can be different. Sensing versus intuitive has to do with how a person takes information in. A sensing person likes things that are sequential or concrete, or established ways, where an intuitive person likes to extrapolate, likes concepts, um, that ideas, future thinking. Thinkers versus feelers. None of these mean that you don't have the other components. It's kind of your home base. And thinkers tend to want to put things in logical sense, and often even at what's right or wrong, where feelers tend to do things in a relational world or emphasis, so that they would be more concerned that everybody's heard, and a thinker might be concerned that the right things are said. So those can become, again, you can see that these can become problems if we don't recognize them when we're relating across the borders with each other. And then last are the judging or perceiving. And judging is not a great word, but I forget why that was developed in the Jungian thought, but it really has to do with closure or open-ended. It has to do with the needing to complete things or to be able to have more opportunities. When I mentioned that associate pastor that I was working with, he led us through a seminar, and he had a question. He said, he said, let everybody come stand in the middle of the room. If you think you need to finish your work before you play, go over to the wall on the right. And so the Jays, we dutifully walk over there, and we turn around, and not everybody came over. And it just like, if you're strong in the judging, completing thing, you really believe you should finish your work before you play. And so we're looking over and thinking those people that's why they're so, they can't produce anything. We're like, what's the deal? And they said, we actually like to play while we work. And we don't like to work with you because you guys never finish your work and you never play. And so it was like two different planets talking to each other. But so Myers-Briggs breaks those four down, four different areas. And as you go into that more deeply, those four areas become 16 different personalities. So as Sandy mentioned, she's an ISFP, which is second from the top and second from the left, a practical custodian. So they keep things in order, which was interesting. Sandy, I didn't know you as well as I did after I saw your assessment. And that seems like those two words describe you pretty well. Would you agree with that? Are you there? She may or may not be there. Anybody?
I'm here. I'm here.
Does it feel like those two words are doing okay for you, the ISFP there?
I didn't hear the first part of when you were, the first part of your question on.
Well, it's just the idea of that description of ISFP, a practical custodian. Does that describe you in just two words at all?
I think so.
Yeah. And I didn't, in your assessment helps me to see that, because those are parts of you, we haven't interacted around any of that very much. So it's kind of interesting. And so it's pretty amazing, a lot of these are amazing, but how just those four components can land pretty deeply in our lives. But it has a lot to do with how we receive energy, how we receive information, how we organize information, and how we view time and decision making. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the application. For temperaments, you'll see again, these things are related, but they're in different order. So let's for a second just think of those four quadrants. Which one would you tend to say is a lion on that? Would it be which word, whether it's sanguine, choleric, melancholic, or phlegmatic? Any thought?
Choleric.
Choleric, yeah. So the choleric would be, so they're not all in the same order, but you'll notice that they are pretty much the same. Which one would be the otter, do you think? Anybody?
Penguin.
The otter would be, yeah. It's funny because in my mind when I said otter, I was thinking beaver, but yes, yes. So so it's almost going counterclockwise. But the beaver is melancholic. So you'll just see it's just different ways again to surface some of the same thoughts. True colors, you'll notice again 4 different areas. So I won't go into them a lot, but if you were to put an animal on blue, what would you call that one?
Otter.
Otter. Good. And green. Anybody want to do that one?
Golden. Oh, green. Sorry, gold is the golden. Yeah.
Yeah. So green, we would say
Lion.
Beaver.
I think it would be the beaver one. Good. Again, they're very similar, but they help you to see yourself in that. Now, the Enneagram is a much deeper one, and that's why I really encourage you to pursue that. I think I gave you some pretty good resources to do that, and if you want to go deeper, we can do that. I am no way trying to sell that because I couldn't handle it if I wanted to do that. But the value of this is, I'm going to just do a quick kind of touch on it, is you'll notice in the center of the circle, there's a few things. One is you'll see the bolded words of head, heart, and gut. You remember, if you watch the video of the Enneagram, it'll explain this stuff much more. But it was very helpful to me because I'd heard and thought of the head or the heart as a motivator or how we process life. But I'm not one of those. I thought I was kind of a head processor, but really it is more of the gut, which is it is, in a way, it's intuitive, but it doesn't mean the same way as Myers-Briggs does. It's that people that are gut related, which are 8s, 9s, or 1s, perceive something, but they don't know necessarily why. They just know it is that. And then they'll try to give reason, which is usually a head thing. Within each one of those triads, there's different colors. So you see the blue, the green, and the red. Within each one of those, there's also kind of like some underlying difficulty, weakness, dark spot, sin. And so for the 8, 9s, and 1s, it can be anger. It can also sometimes be guilt. For the 2s, 3s, and 4s, it's shame. Is there something wrong with me? The 5, 6, and 7s, it can be fear. And so each one of those 3 personalities deals with those root issues differently. And it's amazing how much sense it makes eventually. Also within that center circle, there are, let me see how I want to put it. The emphasis of how, that's not the word. Well, let me go instead. Under each one of the personalities, you'll see the colored words, and then the word underneath that is the thing that personality most wants to avoid. It just hates that. And so whether that is 8s can't handle weakness in themselves or others. 9s run from conflict. 1s don't like anger, tend to have anger down inside. 2s, yes. Did I hear somebody? No. 2s have a hard time expressing their own needs. 3s don't want to feel worthless and failure. 4s, ordinariness just makes them die. They want to be unique. 5s, uselessness is everything is about being useful and in order. And sixes, any deviance from the norm is hard for a six. There's a lot of depth to the Enneagram, and how you can tell that your Enneagram combination, and that again with this particular inventory, the WEPSS thing that I encourage, you'll get a little cluster out of that picture. But you'll know that it fits because it surfaces a lot of what I'll call the false self, the parts of your being that are the hardest for you to handle, which can be actually really valuable because whatever we hide from actually dominates our lives. Another way to look at the Enneagram is, as I mentioned, there's the head, the heart, the head, and the gut. But then you see that those images you could put by the heart is 2, 3, and 4 if you've done it and you're one of those. The head is 8, 9, and 1. And the gut, the head, sorry, I was wrong about that. The head is 5, 6, and 7. The gut is 8, 9. But you see the different motivations for each of those triads, what they want to do, how they handle situations. As you glance through that, let me just leave that there for a moment. And if anybody has a question about it, because I won't go through it all, this will be my last slide, I think. If you know where you are, does it seem like those things describe you well?
So if you have numbers in different quadrants, let's say you have numbers in, say, the gut and the heart, or the head and the heart.
You're going to have you mean if you're, again, I'm not sure how familiar you are, but you mean like your wing is on so the number in parts within your being. Are you there, Samantha?
I'm here, but could somebody mute their mic? Because there's a lot of feedback.
Yeah. There you go. So, Samantha, what are you saying?
So what I'm saying is, I had 1 in the gut and 2 in the heart. Okay. And so when I'm looking at that, I'm confused about, in terms of motivation, am I focused more on the motivation from the heart or from the gut?
You'll have a primary one, and so that will help primarily dictate that. And so whatever your main type is the one that will be most affected in that. But again, so the things that it will be your dominant one, and then the one that's next to that is called the wing. And so there might be an interplay between two of them. But again, that's where we did want to look at it more specifically to think. So do you know what your main number was?
My main number was 1.
Okay. Yeah, so 1 is the gut type. And so if you go down that right column, that would be most of those things would be, might relate to you. Ones tend to want to do right things rightly. So sometimes ones have a hard time acknowledging the not great parts of themselves. So even things like this, you might have a tendency to either judge yourself too harshly or to suppress your judgment because that means you're a bad person. But so that right column would be primary for you. Does that make sense, or does that?
That makes perfect sense, actually. Thank you.
Good. Awesome. Let me stop sharing, come back to all the people. And what I'd like to try to do is for us to break into 2 groups for a moment, and just anything that you want to share within a smaller of anything that has stood out to you about your own personality that you would like to share. But I do want to remind you that there'll still be, 8 people in your group or whatever. So go short. But if anything is stuck out, or a question that you have, you want to start to ask there, that's great. And I'll bring us back together to look at the question after about, I don't know, about 12 minutes. So we won't be very long, but I don't want to keep you long if I bring that up. So in the group, I'll put Paulina in the other group, and anything that's standing out to you about what you're learning about your own personality, because even saying it to strangers can be helpful, just to bring it out that you're learning something. Does that make sense? Let me go to breakout rooms. Gonna go to 2 rooms. It's gonna pick for us. And which one are you? Let me see, open rooms. So you get to choose the room. And Paulia, which one are you in? She's in room 1, so I will go to room 2. Okay, is this the room 2, people?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. If you have a clock, just help me with it somewhere around 10 minutes after 9 that we'll try to get back to the other group. So is anything sticking out to you about your own personality that you'd like to share with us?
Well, for me, the Enneagram was helpful because I'm a 6, but I also gravitate towards the 7. And so I always question whether I was a 6 because I can be an extrovert. And for myself, I can be very not fearful. Like I can do big things. But when it comes to other people, I can be very fearful, especially with kids. And so it always made me question whether I was a 6. And doing this, it was very clear.
That's awesome. And that's a fairly unusual combo that you have, being a 6 with a 7 wing. And so there's a little bit, because 6 is a loyal thing, which you are very much, but it also can have trouble with fear and trust. Security is really a big piece there. 7s, though, do it by going bold and not wanting to look at negative scenarios. So you have part of you that looks down, I imagine, that looks down every negative possibility that could happen. And you have another part of you that says the future's always bright and wants to do activities. So you have a lot going on in that combo. That's awesome. Yeah. Anybody else have anything that's been standing out?
Well, I found out last year, because I haven't had a chance to do the personality section yet, but I found out last year that I was a D. I don't know if it's the Myers-Briggs assessment I did that told me that I was a D, and that I was an extrovert. So I was like a halfway D, not a very strong D. And I realized that really fits me well, because I am not the person that will come into anything and just take charge. I will take charge, however, if it looks like it's falling apart or there's nobody else to do it, then that's when I jump in and I'll just fix things and lead and take charge. And so I'm definitely attracted to things that are broken or systems that are broken, so that it gets my creative juices going. And the extrovert part, I was always considered an introvert. I did the very test 10 years ago when I just came here, and I was an introvert. And I was doing it as a education program, master's level, and they were saying that most teachers are extroverts. I was like, what am I doing in this education system? And I'm an introvert. But I did the test again last year, and it says, you're an extrovert. So I was like, what happened to me all these years? Is it that I'm just now having a self-actualization happening. What's going on? And I realized the Lord just took me back in time when I really was an extrovert, and I got shut down somewhere between the age of 4 and 5. And that was in my home. You know, we were all, as children, we were raised to be very quiet and subservient and submissive. And I remember being like a loudmouth child and just loved to be in charge of my older brothers. And always my mother would just slam me down and shut me up. And I learned to I just got very quiet, and I lost that peace. And it wasn't until I got saved and I got filled with the Holy Spirit, I just got this boldness again, and I was a lion again. But then there were times when I would just go right back down. And then if I'm in ministry, I just get a boldness and I'm doing stuff. But outside of that, if I don't feel as if God is using me, I go right back to being an introvert itself. But today I'm learning that I actually was an extrovert, and I am now, and it feels good to get back to who Yasmin really was created to be.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, you know, that's a description there too, right? Of a family of origin having big impact.
Yes. Yep.
And you know, there's some complexity there. So I'll love it when you do all the personality section, because my guess is that you might have some of that intuitive thinking component. And people who are intuitive do need time alone too. They can't just live out in the big world. Right? So there's a deepening part of that. But it tends to be a strong, when needed, take charge person.
Right.
Good description. Yeah, awesome. But you recognize that. So one, we might be pushed in from our family or some other families, right? A lot of people who are extroverts do not know how to handle introverts. Extroverts have a preconceived false idea that introverts are just immature extroverts. And so they'll say things like, we need you to come out of yourself, and we need you to be, and so extroverts, you never see an introvert trying to make an extrovert into an introvert, but extroverts just torture introverts and think they're immature. And so that's not a good thing. So for any introverts there, sorry about that. The guy who said he poured into me is maybe one of those introverts. I'm not sure. Anybody else want to share anything?
Tom, the first time that I did Myers-Briggs, I've done it twice, probably a decade and more apart. The first time I did it very heavily on the extroverted scale, and the rest were closer to the line. The last time I did it, the extroversion was still there, but it was also closer to the center line. So is that, like, do our personalities shift and grow as we get older, as our experiences, like part of the distortion thing was circumstances in our lives, right? But sometimes our circumstances can also, I think, undistort, if I can use that word, our personalities as well. Maybe if we get into a different circumstance, or a circumstance that's more, that resonates more with our own soul. So I'll mute and let you comment on that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that one way to think of it is in let's either the Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram. You know, those are the two big dogs in this game. Jesus is all of them, right? So he's all 16 Myers and Briggs personalities in a rounded way, and we tend to be predominantly more in one or a couple clustered. The less mature we are, the more polarized we are, meaning that we're only that. We can't even function outside. We can't receive others. Like when I was describing when I was younger, I thought other people, they're like sinning because they were different than me, right? That's an immature me. So when we mature, I don't think we change. Some people are always like, I used to be this and I'm now that. No, I think we become more ourselves as we mature, and we become more rounded. So you'll see, like, part of how you see that is you're less to the end of the grid. You're more towards the, I can function here and here. But when sometimes people will say, no, so I'm not either one. No, you have a home base, but you can go there because you're more mature. And so on the Enneagram, the way that plays out in the version that I want to encourage you guys to take, it has a resourceful and a less resourceful component. So I'm an 8, but an immature 8. I don't like to do this, but the best example I have is an immature 8 is Donald Trump's style of relating. It's bold, it runs over people, it doesn't pay attention to the feedback, it just dominates. That's an immature 8. A caring or a mature 8 is actually a safe place that can keep you safe and will break through things for you. An immature 8 you're afraid of because they'll dominate you. So I could be an 8 in an immature way, or I could mature, I'm still an 8. I'm not going to become a 1 or something different. I'll just grow in that maturing. So that, and the test scores can even show that over time. So you could, on the Enneagram, show up in high, less resourceful aspects of the test, and then later on, as you can always cheat the test, but in trying to be honest, you'll notice growth over time. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Anybody else? We have just a little bit more if you want to share, or if you have a question about anything.
I think one thing that I came away with from your hand.
Joel, can you go louder, because your mic doesn't pick up as well? Thanks.
Yep, thank you. My voice doesn't pick up as well either, so I always need to talk louder. I think the thing I liked from your handout that I took away was, I think when I've taken personality types before, it's a this is who I am feeling, like I just expect that, well, that's what it is, and so it's static. And so I'm looking at one I took in 2012, but I'm looking at some of the responses, and they don't feel like me now. And so I liked your 5 things of the fall, family of origin, circumstances, personal choices, physical factors. And I do think that, I got married 2 years ago, and so the family of origin piece, and then bringing in another family of origin, does allow you to see other perspectives, other circumstances. And so I think the follow-on from that is personal choices, right? So now you're working out what that is. You're working out what family of origin pieces am I going to keep, which ones am I going to let go, and how am I going to reflect on how that is me. And so I think one thing that, the thing that I saw that I don't necessarily align with, it was a phlegmatic, melancholy, that the 4 temperaments. Yeah. And this one broke it into inclusion, control, and affection. And control is how you interact with power. And I came back as phlegmatic supine. And supine is like the 5th one, which is pretty much you'll do whatever somebody wants. And that was my relationship to power. I'm a 5 on Enneagram. And so in strength, I'm doing well. I can move to 8. And 8 is the opposite of supine. And so I think over the past, 6 years, it's not hard for me to exercise that 8. And so I don't think that supine exists nearly as much. And so it has been cool to just reflect over that and see that over that span of years, a bit of growth does change the way that my personality works. And I relate with others. So.
Great. A few things that I hear as you're describing, our family of origin does color us, even as Yasmin was saying. And I had been pastoring a few years and had a pretty powerful season of encountering the Holy Spirit. And I started to become real spacey. I thought something was wrong with me. And actually it was that I was opening up to the intuitive part of me. And my family is not intuitive. My family had an ESTJ, kind of like a CEO, concrete way of dealing. And it wasn't until actually I had an encounter with God that it changed me, opened me up to what I believe was always there, but I was afraid to express, didn't have any model for it earlier. So that's what, I think that part like you're describing is that. Another thing is as you're saying, I'm a 5. Well, for those of you who are being informed, like this is what a 5 is. You notice the amount of information, how he's relating things and all that. That's like a 5. Some others might not do that same thing, but that's interesting. So we relate out of what we are, and that's what makes it awesome. So if you want to process information and understand stuff, you say, Joel, can you look at this stuff? No. So good. I'm going to see what happens when I try to close the rooms. It should not throw us all back in. Last week, remember, somebody was kind of like cut off midstream, but we'll see what happens when I do this. So now, when I did that before, maybe it made our whole group do it. Did you guys have to choose to go back to the room? Because it doesn't give me that. Okay, so I guess, we'll see what happens.
You have both options.
Okay.
You can click on the button, or when the clock runs out, then you'll automatically be thrown back.
Okay, great. So somehow, because I'm with you guys, I'm still with you guys. So maybe I didn't click, and I don't know what happened. So we'll just see. But it's only for 1 minute, so it's not too crazy. But good. Is there anybody we didn't hear anything from? I don't think Anna has said anything. Anna, you got to say something. Whatever you want. You could do a baseball score, anything.
I haven't done the personality section, so I've just been absorbing what everybody else and the sort of discoveries that people have had, and I'm excited to dig into that. I've been working a lot on the spiritual gifts, just really digging into that.
And I will respond to what you sent me. And that was good stuff. Very good stuff. I think we might all be back together now. Is there anything that I'm going to ask Paulia that you feel like is reportable from your group? Anything you can condense or collate in some way?
Yes. For some reason, I've lost everybody's picture on my screen, but I think a really great question was around, as folks discover things about their personalities, how do they kind of determine, or how do they discern which are the things that they need to kind of work on to change, and which are things that are to be, embraced and just as embraced as something that they're just kind of hardwired to be. So I think that was a key question.
Yeah, that's a good one. One of the things, make sure, if you can't make sure you're muted, but one of the things that I think is important is to just see how accurate it is, because in some it's just some of them are more accurate than others, or when you took it, you might do better. But when it gets accurate and it's pointing out the positive and the negative side, and I'll talk about this more down the road too, and don't run away from the negative side. Embrace it. You want to recognize this is part of who I actually am. Now you can grow in that area, but if you try to deny it, it's going to control you in some way. If you pretend it isn't there, or you just try to declare it away, no, it's probably in there, and you can mature your way through it rather than deny it. So again, those weaknesses are often part of how God's made you, so that you can fit with the body and fit with others who are going to strengthen you. So try to embrace it. Recognize, secondly, so one is, if it looks accurate, and one of the ways you can tell it's accurate is share some of it with others who know you well. Second thing is, starts from there, look at it and say, what of this do I want to agree with in God? So those are going to be some of the strengths, or it could be something that you have a sense of, I think that God wants this aspect, or for me to grow it, but you're not going to become something different, but you might put some work into it. Some people want to just work on their weaknesses. That's not what this is. Your strengths are what I want you to embrace and be able to share with others. Your weaknesses are how you're going to be vulnerable and connect with others, and that's how they're going to access you. So those strengths, go for them. Go ahead, Paulia.
Well, I just wanted to say, I'm looking, wait. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I got totally confused. I thought my group got lost in the sauce, so I'm fine.
Is that all you want to do? Let's find your.
That's all I want. I just want to find my group. They just seem to disappear on my screen, so I'm all set.
You're getting lonely. We're still here for you.
Okay.
Does anybody have, we can maybe do one or two questions about anything that you have that came up or that you want to consider.
I think I do have a question that's, it's a follow-up of Paulia's question. And I've informed you a little bit of this on an email. Like the 4 totally just nails me, positive, negative. It's just no getting around it. And because part of the 4 is wanting to be unique, it's offensive to me that I read in a book what I'm like, and it's so accurate. And my sense of myself is I'm so unlike anybody else. It's very amusing. But I think I feel like I want to make progress on the envy part of it. And I think that's the question that I have is, from a sin perspective, I can understand, I can name when I am in that sin and confess it and kind of root it out that way. But there is a way in which I have to acknowledge that I'm going to respond in that way when I see what I don't have and what somebody else has. That's going to get to me in a particular way. I'm vulnerable to that. And I guess that's the question. It's not that you're going to answer the question, but that's the dilemma, is feeling like I'd like to root it out, but the reality is it's how I'm designed. And so it is in some way about, I guess, stewarding that vulnerability.
Good. Well, first, I'm just going to pray healing for you. So we're going to take care of that. And if I would guess, and I think I remember that you were saying that you're a 4 with a 3 wing, right? And that combination is tough for that very thing, because 4s themselves are prone towards what you're saying, but 4s with a 3 wing, I mean, everything is coming against your natural self, so that because you do want to succeed, you do want to accomplish, yet there is that uniqueness. The uniqueness thing that you're sharing is really funny, because my middle son had a hard time. He wanted to know what he was, and he took different inventories, and he finally landed on the 4, and he was so fired up. I can remember he's at a computer in the corner. He was so fired up. He's going to see a friend, and he's like, "Oh, this thing just told me everything I want." And he walked out, and he walked right back in. His face just dropped, and he said, "Even my desire to be unique is not unique." That very thing that you said, it crushed him. So that's the quest, is that unique piece. And I want you to know me, but you could never know me. I'm too deep. It has that mixture. But mix that with the other thing. So I think that you could say it's a propensity to be aware and to be envious. I would say, I'd go a little further. It might sound a little intense. It's kind of like an iniquity. Iniquity is a propensity towards sin. So that means it's like that sin is crouching at my door, but I can master it. But what is it going to mean for me to master it? It means I'm going to recognize when it raises its head, and I'm going to shut that thing down. Now, I'm not going to pretend it isn't there, but I'm going to recognize, no. And how am I going to do it? With a kind of like a generous spirit, that it's an abundance kingdom, not a scarcity kingdom. Because I think that's what's at the door, is like, if they're going to succeed, I'm failing. And the other thing is what I think can maybe address that, if that makes sense.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. One last anything, and then we'll close it up. Anybody got a thought?
I just have a quick question, Tom.
Yeah.
And I think my predicament is a little bit complicated by the fact that I haven't really, I didn't actually step through each of these this time, in sort of this more recent round of reviewing these personality inventories. But I know that, I've walked through this with you in prior years, And the results I got from that exercise are actually completely on the opposite, and I'm referring specifically to the Enneagram. The results that I got out of that were on the completely the opposite side of the circle from my experience walking through it with like Scott and Louise Walker. And I'm just wondering if you have, and aside from just kind of digging into it again and sort of, trying to get cleared, is there any specific perspective you could recommend that would help sort of, I don't know, get to the bottom of who the heck I am?
Yeah. Some of them, even on, I think you did the WEPSS at one point, right, with me. And if you can pull that back up, because it'll say, or you might be, and because there's some that look a little different, but they, or that present similarly, but they're different in their core. And so that can be a helpful first thing to do. And what you really want to do is go look, you can even go online and look for descriptions of different ones that you think might fit you. And as you read them, just see how deeply it resonates with you. Because the tests, it depends on how you're doing that day, and those things are factors. But as you read it, the way that you'll be able to tell is it surfaces the thing that you most don't want to have surfaced. That's you really find it not because it's I like this. There's a little bit of that, but the part that resonates most is I hate this part of me. And so we'll look at that. And if I remember, like 5 and 6 are part of your deal, and 1 probably is. And those are hard to tell sometimes, which is more dominant. I think I would guess you're probably a 6-5 is my guess, just from what I know. But so you might want to read around those things and just see what resonates with you more. So that would be, rather than taking a bunch of inventories, go just say description of a 6 Enneagram. Look it up on the line and read and see how well it hits.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yep. Good. Thanks.
Awesome. Let me pray for us. Unless anybody, I don't want to shut anybody down if you got some burning last thing, but otherwise I'll pray for us and call it.
I just have a quick question. Did you do the thing on Saturday, and is it available?
Yes, I did do the thing on Saturday. I can make it available. It ended up being a little bit more kind of like dialoguing. It was more catching up with where people were overall. And so I didn't get as much into the spiritual gifts. We got more like on some other things. So I will include it in the email, but know that it's an hour it's not as focused as I would have imagined. So it was enough that afterwards I thought, like, maybe I should like make a recording, do a little teaching thing. But I thought, I'm not going to put that. That's too much work for me to pull off. So we did record it. I'll make it available, but recognize that it's more of that than it was teaching.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you for this wonderful crew, and thank you that you designed us. All we want to do is we're digging for the treasures that you've put in our lives. We want to see them. We declare that the kingdom of God is within us. And so we're looking for your intricate design, your purposes. We want to worship you and be faithful sons and daughters before you. We want to enjoy the very gift you've given us of ourselves and the deep forgiveness of Jesus. We want to play our role in the advance of your kingdom and in the deepening of life on earth. So I know you delight as we're seeking our understanding of what you've made in us and how we can align our lives with you. So I pray blessing, deep rest. As you surface different things in our lives, some of them are going to be dark memories. Some of them are going to be hard things. I pray the presence of God, the victorious name of Jesus over our memories. And not that they would go away, but that we would be able to walk with you into the storehouse, into the room in the house that we're afraid to go into the chests that we think are so powerful in darkness or fear that we couldn't look at them. I declare your light and your presence. And would you help us to lay hold of those people around us who would be good comrades, who would be good sounding boards, who would be good prayer people for us, that over these 3 months, we'd have support. We'd be able to share what we're learning. We'd be able to get help. So I pray, Lord, that you would give us eyes to see some of the resources you've placed around us. And again, I pray your delight over everybody participating. Thank you for the support that I already feel and just even how we're relating to each other. Increase this sense of family, this sense of tribe, this sense of we're pursuing the same kinds of things with others. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of this thing. I am so loving doing this with you guys.
Man, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, God bless you all. Good night.